Chapter 1273. Resolved by force. The busybody immediately gossiped. Who is this Tongbing? His cultivation is so low and his qualifications are so poor. He didn't even pass the assessment, but he still got admitted. Now he even wanted to stay in the number 1 dormitory. As the results, he was thrown out by Mr. Xianmu. He really deserves it, haha. Several people next to him agreed, but Hushi had a headache. What's going on? Didn't I ask the dormitory officer to arrange a single dormitory for Tongbing? Did the officer steward secretly disobey me? Tongbing also discovered Hushi at this time. His original crying face became more pitiful. He said pitifully, Mr. Shi, please let me live in this dormitory with you, can you? Hushi frowned. The officer didn't assign a dormitory for you? No. Tongbing shook his head hurriedly. It's me who wants to follow Mr. Shi. Although my cultivation is not high and stupid, I'm diligent. I can serve Mr. Shi. Even if you let me do anything, I will not say no. Besides, I really don't want to live alone in an empty courtyard. Mr. Shi, can you please let me stay? As he spoke, tears fell. Against his delicate little face, he really felt a little pitiful and weak. Hushi only felt a headache. She was really not used to such a weak man. However, Tongbing was an old acquaintance after all. He even said that he could do anything, so she couldn't really refuse him. The crowd watching was in an uproar. They didn't expect that this weak and useless trash actually knew Shiyu. Shit, did we go over the board just now and offend Shiyu? Fortunately, Shiyu didn't intend to question them, which made them relieved. But they were getting more and more disgusted with that weakling Tongbing. In Miracle Healer Academy, strength had always been respected. Without strength, he even tried to ride on someone else's coattail with a pitiful face. They despised such people the most. Seeing Tongbing's eyes swollen from crying, Hushi smacked her tongue. Okay, wait here, I'll discuss with Xianmu. After 15 minutes, Hushi walked out of the dormitory slowly. Everyone was surprised to find that Hushi's clothes had been changed, and there were several scars on her hands and neck. Hushi looked at Tongbing, who was still sitting on the ground, and said, Come in. As soon as these words came out, the audience was shocked. No way. He agrees to it? Master Xianmu just agreed to let this little weakling live in. Is Mr. Xianmu so easy to convince? Tongbing suddenly stood up from the ground with a happy smile. Really? Mr. Shi, can I really live in? Hushi nodded. When she lifted her hand, she hurt the wounds on her arms, making her hiss in pain. A student from the Huang medical branch couldn't help but ask cautiously, Shiyu, what's wrong with your hand and neck? Nothing. Hushi bared her teeth. If there is disagreement among the members of the dormitory, of course, we have to resolve it by force. Whoa! The people around took a deep breath. This time, they didn't see Hushi as an adored genius but at a monster. Shiyu is only at the foundation establishment stage, but he can resolve it with force with Mr. Xianmu. Chapter 1274. Roommate and Mr. Xianmu promised to let that weakling Tongbing to live in. That means Shiyu won the fight. Hushi, of course, couldn't really beat Xianmu. It was just that the two agreed on the fight method was to fight in melee. The circle was the limit. Whoever got out of the circle first would lose. Hushi used some tricks to make Xianmu accidentally step out of the circle, so it turned out that she won. But in fact, with Xianmu's true strength, if he really attacked all out, she probably died before stepping out of the circle. It was just that this guy's melee fighting ability was really not simple. Hushi thought that she had trained her close fighting skills to the limit when she was an assassin. But facing Xianmu, she almost lost. The damage Xianmu had done to her could not be fully healed for at least a day. Don't ask her how she knew. During this time, they often had melee practice matches. As a reward for practicing with Xianmu, Xianmu would give her some cultivation tips. Tongbing hugged his quilt and followed Hushi back into the dormitory with joy and anxiety. In the dormitory, Xianmu was already sitting on his bed, slowly patching up the wound on his left forearm with a bandage. Hushi clicked her tongue. Since Xianmu left a wound on her body, she certainly wouldn't make Xianmu feel better. The wound caused by Xianmu's dagger couldn't heal in a day, and her poison was naturally not easily relieved by spiritual power. With a flick of her wrist, a small porcelain bottle fell on the side of Xianmu's bed. Hushi smiled lightly. This is an external injury elixir for detoxification. Apply a little, then use spiritual power to soothe it. It will heal immediately. Xianmu paused. His deep eyes swept across her face. He quickly took the porcelain bottle and poured the powder onto the wound. This powder had a detoxification effect, so it must have ingredients similar to hydrogen peroxide disinfection. It should be very painful to fall on the wound. But Xianmu didn't seem to feel the slightest bit. After the medicinal powder penetrated into the wound, the 2-inch-long wound healed and scabbed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Finally, the scar disappeared without a trace. Xianmu moved his hand. Then he waved his hand and threw a transparent bead into Hushi's hand. Hushi was startled. Just as she wanted to throw away the unknown object, she felt a refreshed feeling coming from the bead. Immediately afterward, the burning sensation on her wound quickly disappeared, and the bleeding wound on her arm also healed quickly, turning into soft, crystal-like, jade-like skin. Hushi picked up the bead with a hint of surprise. This is? Xianmu said lightly. Your poison is very interesting. Although it cannot penetrate my meridians, it can make my body unable to heal quickly. This bead is a white obsidian pearl specially designed to dissolve evil aura, but it is the lowest grade white obsidian pearl. At most, it can only dissolve a very small amount of low-level evil aura. Evil aura? Hushi thought of the ghostly black dagger in Xianmu's hand and raised her eyebrows. So that is evil aura? No wonder my spiritual power was dispelled when I tried to heal the wound. Hushi smiled and threw the white obsidian pearl into the void. Then she said, thanks. Tongbing, who was following behind Hushi, was full of panic. From time to time he raised his head and peeked at the man sitting on the upper bunk. It was already dark at night, and the illuminated crystal stone was lit up in the house. The luster of the crystal stone reflected on the man's face, which made his clear facial features look cold and charming. Chapter 1275. Don't deserve. And at this time, Xianmu's face no longer had the murderous look as before. When he talked to Shiyu, there was even a soft relaxation in his expression. Tongbing breathed a sigh of relief, but at the same time, he envied Shiyu. She was also at the foundation establishment stage, but she was totally different from him. Such an excellent and powerful person would talk to Shiyu in a gentle voice, and he even let him live in a same dormitory because of Shiyu's request. If he could have the opportunity to stay with Shiyu to study, he must work harder to make more people acknowledge him. One day, he would let this powerful man in front of him speak to him as equal and gentle as he treated Shiyu. Tongbing clenched his fists, hugged the bedding in his hands a little and said awkwardly, Senior Xianmu, nice to meet you. With that said, he was about to put his quilt on the bed. There were a total of 4 beds in the dormitory, which were placed diagonally. There were upper and lower bunks. Hushi and Xianmu both chose the upper bunk, so Tongbing put his bedding on Shiyu's lower bunk. However, before he could spread the quilt, a man's cold voice came from above. Get out! Tongbing's body suddenly froze, and he raised his head in disbelief. The man above was still handsome, but he regained his indifference and cruelty in the afternoon. I promised to let you enter the courtyard, but I didn't promise to let you live in the dormitory. If you want to stay next door. Next door? Tongbing has organized the dormitory, so of course he knew where the next door was. It was icy cold, no spirit gathering array, no pill cauldron, just a cold little bed of a utility room. Hushi frowned. Seeing that she was about to speak, Xianmu said lightly, Shiyu, I let him in because of you. If you say more, I don't mind crippling one more annoying thing. Hushi's mouth twitched. She knew that Xianmu had always had a bad temper and had a lot of secrets. He was most afraid of others annoying him. She suspected that a large part of the reason why she was able to live in the dormitory was that she had no less secrets than him, that she was afraid of being discovered. For example, they often snuck out in the middle of the night. They both knew, but they didn't expose each other. It's really not suitable for Tongbing to stay here. Even, let him enter the courtyard. Whether it is she or Xianmu, they have discovered what secrets are hidden in Tongbing, and they want to find out. Hushi looked at Tongbing. Why don't you go to a separate courtyard? No. Tong Bing let out a sharp, weeping cry. His tears fell again. I said that I want to stay here to serve Mr. Shi. Suddenly, he raised his head and looked at the indifferent man above with tears in his eyes. We are all classmates. This is also my dormitory. Why can't I live here? As soon as he finished speaking, Tong Bing suddenly felt a slap on his face. The slap was formed by the wind. And the man sitting on the bed didn't seem to move. He just said a few words coldly, because you don't deserve it. Tong Bing covered his red and swollen face and stood there in a daze. Tears streamed down his delicate little face. He looked at Xianmu with pleading eyes, but Xianmu didn't even look at him. Hushi was also speechless, whether it was Tong Bing or Xianmu. Xianmu was overbearing, but Tong Bing also made her unable to understand. There was a better place to live. Why did he want to trigger Xianmu? Chapter 1276. Real purpose. However, she was not a saint who would help everyone. There were some things she could meddle, and there were some things that she had no interest in. In this Miracle Healer Academy, the weak pray the strong and the strong are respected. If he wanted to stay here and be respected, what was the use of crying? The only way was to improve his strength. Thinking of this, Hushi ignored them and returned to her bed to sleep. Tong Bing's pleading eyes looking at Hushi turned into disappointment when he saw Hushi closed her eyes. He bit his lips and stood there dumbfounded. His tears turned cold. Finally, he gritted his teeth, bent down and picked up his quilt, and walked out the door. When he walked out of the dormitory door, Tong Bing suddenly turned his head and choked out, Mr. Xianmu, I will definitely work hard to be acknowledged by you. However, before he finished, a gust of wind shut the door. Tong Bing only felt a pain in his nose and cheeks, and the tears couldn't help falling again. But he still bore it, turned around and went to the utility room. 5 days later, Hushi had basically figured out the general orientation of the Beijing Pavilion. In other words, Little Egg remembered the brief map and patrol situation of Beijing Pavilion. She even walked around pretending to admit the wrong way. She also let Xiaoli confirm the place where Wu Qi's aura appeared. The people in the Beijing Pavilion now had a much better attitude toward Hushi. There was no other reason. Under Hushi's conditioning, his honor's complexion had indeed improved a lot. 5 days had passed, and the illness didn't trigger again. In the quiet private room, Hushi retracted her hand from the middle-aged man's wrist vein and smiled slightly. Although your condition has not improved, your physical condition has improved a lot. Maybe you won't have to wait 10 days for the craniotomy. A hint of joy flashed in the middle-aged man's eyes, and the hand he withdrew trembled slightly because of excitement. No matter how high his strength, how powerful, how calm he behaved, no one wouldn't disregard his own life. What's more, his illness was still so embarrassing and ugly when it was triggered. As long as he thought of his crazy appearance being seen by others, the middle-aged man felt more unbearable than death. It wasn't that Lu Shuyang didn't relieve his pain in the past, but he could feel that the power in his head that drove him crazy was getting stronger and stronger. However, he felt different after the young man gave him the treatment. Although the evil power in his brain had not diminished, it seemed to be bound by something. He no longer felt that his life was threatened. Just the accommodative treatment can make me feel alive again. What about that surgery? Will it really cure me completely? The middle-aged man took a deep breath and quickly stabilized his originally tumultuous emotions. A pair of dark eyes fell on Hushi, and he slowly said, These days, you have come to treat me every day, but you have never asked me who am I? Little girl, aren't you curious? Hushi smiled leisurely. If I ask, will you tell me? Facing the middle-aged man's gaze, Hushi spread her hands and said, Well, since you won't tell me, why should I ask? The middle-aged man laughed lowly. What an interesting little girl. But also, the real purpose of your coming here is not all to cure me, right? Chapter 1277. Mischievous little girl. Hushi was startled. She raised her head suddenly and stared at the calm middle-aged man. The middle-aged man didn't seem to realize her vigilance at all, and he still said calmly, Little guy, don't panic. If I want to expose you, do you think you can figure out the terrain of the Beijing Pavilion so quickly? Hushi frowned. What do you mean by that? I'm just a guest of the Beijing Pavilion. The middle-aged man raised his eyebrows and said meaningfully, except for this palace, what happens in other places has nothing to do with me. Except for my safety, my subordinates will not care about the others. You get it? Hushi's eyes suddenly lit up, looking straight at the middle-aged man. After a long while, she suddenly raised the corners of her mouth and smiled slowly. Oh, I forgot to mention something. Because of your body condition is good, the success rate of craniotomy has increased to 90%. The middle-aged man only felt his heart skip a beat. Then he snapped back to his senses. He pointed to the bright young man or girl and said with a half-smile, "What a mischievous little girl." With the hint or assurance of the middle-aged man, Hushi planned to go to the Beijing Pavilion that night. The night was dark and silent. Hushi's figure was shuttling between buildings like a phantom. Her aura had been restrained to almost nothing and her footsteps were silent. Even if the night guards passed by, they would not be aware of her existence at all. The Beijing Pavilion soon appeared in front of them. The barrier separated the two worlds, so she couldn't see what was going on inside. And she didn't know whether the path ahead was safe or not. But no matter it was safe or not, she would definitely go to find out. As long as it was the people who were protected by her, she would let them live well. The slender fingers rubbed lightly on her face, and the human skin mask quickly covered her face. The face that was originally alluring had turned into an ordinary face. The age seemed to even increase by 10. Hushi held the inscribed jade slip lightly in her hand, and walked quickly through the barrier. As soon as she passed through the barrier, she heard a whisper from the front. Did the barrier fluctuate just now? Who will come to the Beijing Pavilion so late? There is no fluctuation, you must be dazzled. Let's go to your room, and discuss about cultivation. Hushi's figure was completely hidden behind the rockery, and she breathed a sigh of relief until the two were far away. The person who just said the other party's dazzling voice sounded like one of the people beside his honor. Fortunately, he led people away, otherwise she would definitely be exposed. Taking a deep breath, Hushi used Purple Abyss Vine as a medium to ask Xiaoli. Xiaoli, can you still sense Wuqi's aura now? Xiaoli's worried cry came from the void. Miss, my brother's aura is getting weaker and weaker. I can feel that my brother is very weak. Is he going to die? Hushi squinted and said. Then can you sense Wuqi's position? It's very vague. It seems to be in the southwest. Southwest. That's the opposite of the palace where his honor lives? Hushi didn't stay any longer, and carefully headed in the direction Xiaoli pointed. In fact, it was best to let Little Golden Dragon and Xiaoli come out to explore the way, but for some reason, Hushi always had an ominous premonition. Chapter 1278. Lose their minds. She seemed to be able to sense that there seemed to be a very powerful person in the Beijing Pavilion at night, and that person's cultivation was not much lower than that of the middle-aged man and her master. Moreover, in the southwest direction of Beijing Pavilion, there was a dark aura that made her feel irritable and manic. This atmosphere was especially effective for magical beast. The little guys in the void were affected more or less except Little Egg. Little Golden Dragon slammed into the giant tree in the void in a violent circle. Little Dumb Cow followed Little Egg and kept digging soil, and the little fox kept digging soil. The mood was even more unstable, and he kept crying for his brother. Boss, let me go out and help you. If there are bad guys, I will fight for you. I don't want to be locked inside. Mumu, get out. Woo, brother, what if my brother dies? I'm going to decimate the person who hurt my brother. As she got closer to the southwest, the emotions of the little guys in the void became more and more unstable. Even in the end, they wanted to rush out regardless of her orders. Hushi frowned and steeled herself to order Purple Abyss Vine. Tie them all up to me. None of them will be released without my order. Little Golden Dragon and their stealth level were good, but Hushi always felt that Little Golden Dragon would definitely be found here. In the void, Little Egg, who saw his little friend tied up, was confused and a little scared. Mom, what happened to Little Golden Dragon and Little Dumb Cow? Why did they become so scary? Hushi's divine sense probed into the void. As expected, the anxiety and irritability on the faces of the three little guys turned into an unconcealed rage. and their words began to turn into savage roars, no longer complete words. Only Xiaoli was better, but she also released a strong beastkin energy. They seemed to gradually lose their minds and became less like themselves. Little Egg cried worriedly. Hushi entered the void to check the pulses of the three little guys. Then she breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they are only stimulated by a unique medicinal fragrance and entered a state of frenzy. Hushi took out silver needles and pierced the acupuncture points of the three little guys. Soon, the roaring little guys became quiet. Little Golden Dragon and Little Dumb Cow fell into a coma, while Xiaoli was in a daze, trying to keep her eyes open. "Miss, please save my brother." "Don't worry, you continue to show me the way." Hushi had already expected the worst. Of course, it would be best to rescue Wuxia and escape successfully, but if she couldn't, she could just reveal herself. The badass His Honor was still waiting for her to undergo a craniotomy, so she didn't believe that the people of the Beijing Pavilion dared to kill her. However, going all the way to the southwest, Hushi was stunned by what he saw at the end. Because in front of her was a wall, and it was a wall that had no end. This path clearly ended here, but Xiaoli in the void kept shouting anxiously, "Brother's aura. Miss, it's my brother's aura. I feel it. It's not far away. What's going on?" It is clearly a dead end, but Xiaoli feels Wuqi's aura. "Boss, this is the phantom enchantment." The voice of Little Golden Dragon suddenly came from the void. "Little Golden Dragon, have you recovered?" Little Golden Dragon lowered his head in embarrassment. "My lofty image in front of the boss is all ruined now. Just a mere beast luring incense can get me? My experience is still not enough, careless." Chapter 1279. Altar Boss. The inscribed jade slip in your hand is the highest pass in the Beijing Pavilion. As long as you have it, the illusion barrier will be easily broken. Hushi touched it with her hand. This is clearly a wall. How to break it? Close your eyes, condense your fundamental essence. Imagine that there is no road ahead, and activate the inscribed jade slip. Hushi immediately did as he said. She focused her will on her forehead and convinced herself that there was a path ahead and there was no obstacle. She paced step by step toward the wall. When she was about to touch the wall, a strange thing happened. The wall seemed to be swayed by water waves, and the water flowed to both sides. And Hushi's body passed through the center of the water flow without any obstruction. Ah! Roar! As soon as Hushi opened her eyes, she heard shrill screams. No, not only the screams, but also the heart-piercing roars of wild beasts. Their hatred and anger seemed to be at their peak. "Miss, I feel my brother's aura is getting closer, but his condition is very bad. Ooh, I feel like my brother is about to die. And it's so scary here. Miss, what is this place?" Xiaoli's cry of panic and fear came from the void. Not to mention Xiaoli felt worried and terrified. After entering this place, even Hushi felt a sense of oppression that made her tremble. Moreover, there was a creepy and depressing aura that made her both disgusted and irritable. This place seemed to be a courtyard. Its layout and house furnishings were almost identical to the Beijing Pavilion. It could be said that this place was like a mirror image of the Beijing Pavilion, except that the Beijing Pavilion was filled with sunshine and righteousness. Then this place was dark and bloody. There were not many guards here, but the entire courtyard was shrouded in the enchantment. As long as she used a little spiritual power here, she would be discovered. In addition to the enchantment, there was also a thick black-purple smoke. Hushi knew that it was a powerful anesthetic as soon as she smelled it. Ordinary martial artists would immediately fall into a coma if they inhaled a little. But the poison of course posed no threat to her. Hushi took a deep breath, calmed down, and slowly walked in the direction Xiaoli pointed. The first thing she passed by was an altar. The altar was set in the center of the courtyard, which was the closest place to the His Honor Palace in the Beijing Pavilion. On the altar, a teenager was naked in the upper part of his body, and he was tied to a column in a coma, and a gray-haired old man was forming a complicated gesture on the boy's dantian. After the gesture was completed, the boy screamed in pain and twitched violently. However, his consciousness was still stuck in chaos, unable to open his eyes. An emerald light cluster slowly overflowed from the young man's dantian. Then it was guided to a naked woman not far away. Hushy's heart moved when she saw the emerald light cluster. The light group exuded a strong and pure aura of life, which made her feel very familiar, but she couldn't remember it now. As the emerald light cluster was guided into the body of the naked woman, the woman who was in a coma struggled vigorously, and she made a sharp and shrill roar. The next moment, a scene that shocked Hushy appeared. As the woman lying on the ground screamed, her body was morphing between human form and white snake. Chapter 1280. Waste from the scream and the way the woman rolling on the ground. One could see how painful she was. Xiao Li's exclamation came from the void. "Miss, that's a beastkin. Just like Xiao Li and brother." In Miluo continent, there was usually only one place where real intelligent beastkin appeared, and that was the magical beast forest. There was only one word difference between a beastkin monster and a magical beast, but it was actually a world of difference. Magical beast usually had no spiritual wisdom, unless it grew to the rank 9 or above and successfully transcends the calamity. It was possible to breed spiritual wisdom. Beastkins were actually just magical beasts at the beginning, but their bloodlines were very noble and powerful. Usually, as long as they passed their infancy, they could awaken their wisdom and even transfigure into human form. Since they had intelligence, they were naturally very powerful and difficult to catch. However, Xiao Li said, "Miss, there are a lot of beastkins being caged here, and each of them is very painful." Woo, Xiao Li is so scared. What are they going to do with so many beastkins? While they were talking, on the altar in front, the female beastkin suddenly let out a miserable cry. Immediately afterward, her dantian suddenly burst open. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere, and a light green crystal stone mixed with blood-red patterns slowly flew to the hand of the white-bearded old man. Hushy looked at the crystal stone, inexplicably feeling extremely frightened. But the white-bearded old man shook his head regretfully. "Wasted another one, take it away." The beastkin had returned to her human form, and the injury on her abdomen had also healed, but she seemed to have completely lost her vitality and was dying. Soon someone came up to drag the beastkin into the depth of the dark palace. Xiao Li said anxiously, "Miss, my brother is also in that direction." Hushy's figure seemed to melt into the darkness, quietly following the two martial artists who took the beastkin away. However, halfway through, one of the martial artists suddenly touched the beastkin and smiled slyly. "I don't think this white snake beastkin will be able to survive the next condensate. Next time she will definitely be turned into a pile of bones. What a pity for such a beautiful and enchanting body." The flame in the other person's eyes flashed, then he showed a knowing smile. "Then why don't we have fun with her first? This white snake beastkin is at the peak of rank 6. She is the second who can survive 3 times of condensing crystal. Just slightly worse than that wolf clan cub. The elders valued her, so we didn't dare to do anything casually, but now she's going to be abolished anyway. I heard that the snake beastkin's body is particularly smooth and tender." Hee. They looked at each other and smiled with their eyes full of greed and lust. Soon, the unconscious beastkin was dragged into one of the rooms. The door was closed. Then came the screams, curses, and struggles of the beastkin. Hushy knew that she should leave now. That was the safest way to find Wuxia. However, as the beastkin's swearing turned into a desperate cry, she finally couldn't take it anymore. The door of the room was opened silently. 2 martial artists who wanted to take advantage of the beastkin didn't even notice anyone coming in. Hushy's movements were also very fast. The silver needles were launched with all her spiritual power. The martial artists, who were still laughing wildly, froze with a look of horror on their faces. Immediately afterward, they felt their necks tighten, and severe pain came from their necks. Chapter 1281. Vicious Voodoo. Something was gnawing away at their arteries and blood vessels swiftly and irresistibly, separating their heads from their bodies. Who? Not a word could be uttered before they were completely dead. Purple abyss vine quickly devoured the 2 of them, leaving no clothes or hair behind. However, Hushy didn't realize that when they died, 2 faint wisps of green smoke flew toward the roof and finally dissipated into the beams. After Hushy cleaned up the 2, she looked at the beastkin who was struggling to get up from the ground. The beastkin's face was pale, but her expression was very calm. There was a trace of doubt and gratitude in her eyes. Who are you? Why did you save me? Hushi narrowed her eyes and didn't answer her, but she asked, just now on the altar, what was that person doing to you? Hushi's question made the beastkin shudder, and her expression became extremely panicked and frightened. However, she quickly regained her composure and said in a hoarse voice, I don't know. I have never seen such vicious voodoo. All I know is that every time I go to the altar, the beastkin power in my beastkin essence pill will be drained and my vitality will also be lost. If I go through it one more time, I will definitely die. Hushi frowned. If Wuxia is also sent to the altar, then the consequences. She didn't want to think about it. She just said to the beastkin, I still have things to do here. You do your own thing and don't ruin my plan. Hushi then quickly disappeared from the room. The beastkin stretched out her hand to keep her, but in the blink of an eye, she couldn't even capture her silhouette. As the green smoke in the room disappeared without a trace, in a remote hut in the courtyard, a sullen and ugly man suddenly opened his eyes and said with a cold smile, Where did the little bug come from? How dare you act wildly here? Hee hee, do you think you can leave this place after coming in? As soon as the ugly man finished speaking, he flickered and disappeared. At the same time, no one noticed that at the barrier between the Beijing Pavilion and this mysterious dark courtyard, a man dressed in black with a black mask stepped in and intruded into the boundary of the dark courtyard. Hushi walked very carefully all the way and was mentally prepared. But seeing the scenes here, she was still in a state of turmoil, unable to calm herself down. This palace looked very similar to the Beijing Pavilion from the outside, but it was a huge prison inside. It was divided into the upper, middle and basement floors. In this prison, almost every room had a beastkin or a magical beast of rank 7 or higher. A few more rooms were locked with martial artists who were in a coma. Those magical beasts and martial artists aside, those beastkins had almost all just morphed. They were either ignorant children about the same age as Shaoli or boys and girls like that female beastkin or Wuxia. These beastkins were all badly tortured. Some of the children beastkins looked aged on their brows and skin despite their tiny figures. Their bodies were morphing between human form and beastkin form. They seemed desperate to maintain their beastkin form, but they would be forced back to human form because of the pain. The constant crying and wailing in his ears made Shaoli more and more panicked and nervous. She didn't know how her brother would be treated. What surprised Hushi was that she had searched almost every room in the palace, but she still could not find Wuxia. Shaoli's sensing could only determine the general direction, but she couldn't tell the specific location. Chapter 1282. Wuxia in a coma. Are you looking for that wolf boy? A woman's cold and sweet voice suddenly came from her ears. Hushi was startled. Then she found that the white snake beastkin drooped down from above, and she didn't notice it. Seeing the vigilant look on Hushi's face, the beastkin quickly said, I'm not following you, it's just that we white snakes don't like to owe favors. If you want to find the wolf boy, come with me. After weighing it, Hushi quickly followed the pace of the beastkin. Following behind the white snake banshee, Hushi found out that the beastkin was very fast. Her lower body morphed into a snake shape. When she passed through all places, there was no sound at all. No wonder Hushi didn't notice her just now. Soon, the beastkin took Hushi to a strange place. It was only then that Hushi knew that there was not only the first underground floor, but also the second underground floor in this dark palace. It was just that the entrance to the second underground floor was covered up, so she didn't notice it at all. The second underground floor was empty and dark. Even the roar of the beast could not be heard. The white snake beastkin whispered, It's this place. The beastkins with the highest talent bloodline are detained here, but many beastkins have been tortured to death by them. The wolf boy you are looking for is the only one left now. But I'm afraid he is not far from death. When the beastkin laughed, her voice was indescribably sad. Hushi frowned slightly, and a crystal stone for lighting appeared in his hand. Soon, she saw the scene that made her gasp in shock. On the ice-cold green stone ground not far away, a boy was casually left on the ground. Probably because of the unusually hidden and sturdy cell, no one was guarding it at all, and there were no chains on the boy. However, Hushi knew that even if all the doors here were opened at this moment, the boy probably wouldn't be able to escape. The young man was half naked. His silver-white hair scattered behind him. The skin on his body was even more wrinkled, as well as full of pitted scars. The only thing that could tell the boy's actual appearance was that face, the young man's face. Hushi recognized at a glance that it was Wuxia, who gave her his vital jade pendant, and considered her as his master. Brother. Xiaoli couldn't hold it any longer. She jumped out of the void and rushed toward the young man on the ground. The appearance of Xiaoli surprised both the beastkin and Hushi. Hushi was worried about Xiaoli's safety. After all, everyone who was detained and tortured here was beastkins, so she knew how dangerous it was for Xiaoli. And the beastkin saw through Xiaoli's true identity at a glance. It was a rarer than that wolf cub, a nine-tailed silver fox. Xiaoli pushed the unconscious young man several times, but he showed no sign of awake at all. She looked at Hushi anxiously and cried, "Miss, what's wrong with him? Is he dead?" Hushi quickly came to Wuqi's side, took the pulse of his hand, and then frowned tightly. Wuqi's condition was worse than he looked. All the beastkin power and life source in his body seemed to be hollowed out. He was obviously just a young beast that had just grown up, but his physical condition seemed to be an old beastkin, struggling at a dying state. Hushi took out the spirit healing pill mixed with 9th secluded spirit spring and fed them to Wuqi. Then she took out the silver needle and gently stimulated his acupoints to promote the absorption. Wuqi let out a low moan and opened his eyes, but his weak eyes were quickly closed again. Chapter 1283. Ugly Man Brother. Xiaoli grabbed Wuqi's hand tightly. "Miss, what's wrong with him?" Hushi shook her head and said, "We should bring Wuqi out of this place first." Ah! Before Hushi's words were finished, the scream of the white snake beastkin came from behind him. "Hee, you still want to leave after coming here?" Hushi turned her head sharply, and she immediately met a pair of sinister triangular eyes. A man with an extremely ugly appearance appeared in the underground, and was smiling at her sinisterly. Hushi looked up at the passage where she came down, then she looked at the man's feet. She immediately realized it. This man came in through the teleportation array. I have been guarding the entrance where I came in, but I didn't expect. I'm still careless. The ugly man was grabbing the beastkin's neck in his hand, holding her in his arms. He even licked her ears, making a strange laughter. The beastkin was trembling with fear. Her eyes were full of fear and despair. The ugly man shook his head and said, "Tcc, it's so pitiful. Your beastkin power only has 30% left. You will be thrown away after one more time. What a waste. As the punishment for bringing them in I will devour you. At least you will be useful in the end." As soon as he finished speaking, the ugly man's head changed terribly. The whole face was split along the bridge of the nose, revealing a bloody mouth and swallowing the head of the beastkin. Blood splattered everywhere, and the whole head of the beastkin disappeared in the big mouth. Only the weak body twitched and trembled before collapsing to the ground. Hushi's hand that just threw out the silver needles trembled slightly. There was a hint of anger in her eyes. The ugly man's appearance had returned to normal. He pulled out a few silver needles on his face like it was nothing. "What kind of attack weapon is this? It's even smeared with poison? This is interesting." As he said that, a black light flashed on his hand. The few silver needles were immediately melted and disappeared without a trace. Immediately, the ugly man wiped the blood on his mouth and looked at Hushi sinisterly. "Tell me, boy, who are you? Are you a student of the Miracle Healer Academy? What are you trying to do here secretly?" Hushi didn't answer his words, but her divine sense moved. Both Xiaoli and Wuqi were transferred into void. The ugly man was stunned for a moment, then he immediately became excited. "You retrieved them into the spiritual beast void, so they are your contracted beasts? That little girl is also beastkin? What breed is she? Look at how pink she looks. Her beastkin bloodline is definitely not low. Haha, lucky me." Hushi looked at him coldly without speaking. The ugly man laughed twice, looking at her from top to bottom with aggressive eyes. "What a pity, what a pity. This figure and skin are so alluring, but it's a pity that this face is not good enough." But it doesn't matter. I can peel a beautiful face and cover it on your face, so that I can play comfortably and have fun. Hushi did not get angry by this, but she said lightly, "What did you do to Wuxia?" "Wuxia? Hee, do you mean that little wolf cub?" The ugly man shook his head indifferently and said, "I advise you to give up such an almost useless beastkin." Chapter 1284. Pray, even if you take him away, he won't be able to wake up again. At most, he will die of old age, dead not more than 10 years. As long as you hand over that little girl to me and sleep with me, I will promise to let you join us. How about that? As he said that, he looked at Hushi with unbridled eyes as if he wanted to peel off her clothes immediately. Hushi's eyes showed icy killing intent. This person's cultivation level was at least as high as nascent soul, which was definitely not something she could resist now. This enmity, I will remember it. Just as the ugly man was laughing, Hushi suddenly smashed something on the ground. In an instant, the empty underground second floor was filled with a large amount of dark red smoke. The ugly man was taken aback. His eyes were instantly blurred. The little prey that he eyed on disappeared instantly. The thick smoke was mixed with highly poisonous, which was nothing to an ugly man. However, he was still annoyed. He originally thought that there was no threat, but the prey escaped right under his nose, which made him very irritated. "Hee, you think you can still get away from Mojing Pavilion? Stop dreaming. Little prey, just come to me obediently." Hushi was really in a bad mood right now. If, when she came in, there wasn't a single guard in this dark courtyard, then the guards now were 10 times more than the guards at the Beijing Pavilion. Moreover, the guards patrolling around were all above the Gold Core Stage Intermediate Stage. There were even a few nascent Soul Stage old men leading the team. She might not be afraid to encounter the teams of the Gold Core Stage guards alone, but she couldn't get rid of them immediately. As long as they made a little noise, they would inevitably attract a large number of guards, even the martial artists of nascent Soul Stage. And these guards were strange. It seemed that they were not just looking for her, but other people. Could it be that someone broke into this courtyard like me tonight? At this moment, a group of guards passed by, and she heard their conversation. "What the hell is going on tonight?" Eldertson suddenly raged out. "Even Protector Ian is looking for someone. Because he couldn't find anyone, he killed several beastkins out of anger. Haven't you heard? The little wolf cub on the second basement floor was rescued, and it was even in front of Protector Ian. Protector Ian has been looking for more than an hour in this courtyard, and can't find her. Can he be not mad? Someone actually came here to save the beastkin? Could he be a beastkin too? No, it's impossible for beastkin to pass through the barrier. But that little wolf cub is precious, but it's already dying. So what if we lose it? Protector Ian has always had a bad temper, but why even Eldertson? It is said that something important was stolen from Eldertson. My God, Eldertson's cultivation level far exceeds nascent soul stage. Who can steal from him? After the guards were far away, Hushi jumped off the beam and squinted slightly. I am really not isn't the only one who broke into the yard. Jia, little prey, I already feel it. You are here, right? Ha, I told you. You can't escape from me. Hushi was startled, and the ugly man's voice came from a corner not far away. He indeed has a way to trace me. It's too late to jump onto the beam now. What should I do? Hushi was hesitating, and suddenly she felt a chill on her neck. Chapter 1285. Do not move immediately afterward. A powerful force enveloped her, suppressing the spiritual power in her body, making her unable to move. Immediately afterward, a pair of thick, cold, bloody hands covered her mouth and quickly dragged her into a room beside. Hushi was shocked and was about to struggle when a man's low and hoarse voice came into her ear. Don't move, if you want to live. The killing intent lingered around her, and the hand around her neck seemed to be able to squeeze her fragile neck at any time. Right at this moment, the sound of light and heavy footsteps and the eerie laughter came from outside the door. Little prey, I know you are here, come out now. If I catch you, I swear I'll peel your skin, cut a hole in your belly and stuff snakes, worms, rats and ants into that hole. Aha. Scum, you hear me? Show yourself now. Otherwise, I'll let you suffer a living hell. The ugly man paced back and forth several times. However, he walked back and forth in this area several times, but he did not find any trace. Finally, he scolded ruthlessly. Scum! You ran away again? You wait for me. Wait for me. It wasn't until the ugly man's breath finally disappeared that the hand that had restrained Hushi slowly let it go. However, the only thing that was released was the hand that was clasping her neck. The hand covering her mouth was still not released. The hand that had been clasping her neck was wrapping around her waist instead. Hushi frowned. She could feel the strength of the man behind her, the overwhelming strength, which she couldn't compete with at all. However, the man's spiritual aura was obviously disordered, and there was a strong smell of blood on his body. Obviously, he was seriously injured. Hushi reached out and tried to pull the hand that was covering her mouth away. Unexpectedly, the man's vigilance was very high. As soon as she moved, the hand that was loosely holding her waist immediately held tight, as if he could break her body at any time. Hushi took a deep breath, wondering if she had to use Little Purple to attack the man by surprise. A low and hoarse voice came into her ears again. I can let you go, but you don't make noise. Hushi nodded immediately. The big hand covering her was slowly put down. The bloody breath and the suffocating pressure disappeared, making Hushi heave a sigh of relief. Just now, thank you. Hushi knew that if this man hadn't just pulled her away at the right time, and used a mysterious method to cover up her aura, she would have been caught by the ugly protector Een. The breath behind her was short and cold, and the smell of blood was getting stronger and stronger. Hushi wanted to take a step back, but found that the hand on her waist did not loosen. The cold aura came from behind her made her shiver. She squinted and said in a deep voice, Didn't you say that as long as I don't make noise, you'll let me go? The man behind her seemed to be stunned for a moment, and he finally slowly let go of her slender waist. When the hand was retracted to the side, it was lightly clenched into a fist as if nervous and embarrassed. This time, Hushi was finally able to turn his head to look at the man behind her. It was a man wrapped in a pitch-black cloak with a black mask on his face. His eyes couldn't be seen clearly. Only his gaze could vaguely be felt. What are you doing here? The man suddenly asked in a hoarse and low voice. Don't you know how dangerous it is here? Chapter 1286. Am I dreaming? Hushi was even more strange now. Do I know you? Why should you care if I'm in danger or not? Then what are you doing here again? The man's aura turned cold. He stepped back and said, Follow me. After speaking, he opened the door and walked out quietly. Hushi was stunned for a moment, and she quickly followed, but she was even more curious. Who is this man? Does he want to take me out? Why? They quickly came to the vicinity of the phantom enchantment. Hushi breathed a sigh of relief. I finally can get out. However, the man who was rushing toward the barrier stopped suddenly, turned around abruptly, and stared at something not far away. In the darkness, an old man with white hair and beard that grew to his chest slowly walked out. The old man stared at the man in a black shirt and sneered. Do you think you can escape after stealing the treasure of my clan? The man in a black shirt didn't look at the old man, but he said to Hushi, You go first. Hushi was stunned for a moment. Then she saw the man in a black shirt take a step forward, and exuded a powerful aura that made her body instinctively tremble. Hushi was startled. This huge spirit pressure and aura must be more powerful than the nascent soul stage. The white-bearded old man on the opposite side was also shocked slightly. Soul-splitting stage later stage. No wonder you dare to come here to steal from me. Fortunately, you have been injured by that trap formation. Otherwise I would not be your opponent. Tell me, who the hell are you? How did you sneak into Mojang Pavilion? Having said that, the white-bearded old man also exuded a strong spirit pressure. Although it was not as good as the man in a black shirt, it was close enough. Hushi was horrified. She knew that such a battle level was not something she could participate in. If she stayed here, she would become a burden to the man in a black shirt. Thinking of this, she did not waste time and immediately ran toward the phantom enchantment. However, just after running a few steps, a man's voice suddenly came from behind. Be careful. The next moment, a powerful and vicious attacking force attacked her chest fiercely. At the critical moment, Hushi tried her best to dodge, but there was still a sharp pain on her shoulder. Her body flew backward like a kite with a broken string. Hushi had just summoned Purple Abyss Vine and wanted to let Purple Abyss Vine hold her body, but her arms and waist suddenly felt tight. A pair of hands wrapped around his waist and gently pulled her into a warm and tight embrace. The girl's soft and petite body was embedded in that embrace, indescribably intimate and ambiguous. Hushi was startled and was about to struggle. Then she suddenly felt a familiar and warm atmosphere aura him. It was like raging enthusiasm and anger, and it also contained the tolerance and love of someone. This aura? Hushi's body suddenly stiffened. Am I having an illusion because missing too much? Otherwise, how could that person appear here? How could he appear at such a critical moment? How could he embrace me so enthusiastically? Hushi took a deep breath and slowly looked up. What caught her eyes was an ordinary face. But those eyes, as bright as stars, as deep as cold pools, were full of their own reflections. How could she not recognize who this person was? She reached out her hand as if enchanted, touched the man's face lightly and murmured, I'm not dreaming, right? Nangongyu, why are you here? Chapter 1287. Being jealous, Nangongyu tightened his arms abruptly and hugged her soft body into his arms. He lowered his head and gently sniffed the familiar medicinal scent of the girl's body, breathing quickly and contentedly. God knows how much he missed this little girl that he almost went crazy. But he snorted coldly, if I don't come, I won't know how many dangerous things you have done behind my back. Sheer, shouldn't you be punished? Hushi listened to the man's complaint, but she smiled slightly. She glanced at his face with eyes full of joy. How long has it been since I left Nangongyu? Seems like a long time. Without seeing him, I really don't know how much I miss this guy. Nangongyu looked at the wound on the girl's shoulder in distress. As he was about to channel spiritual power to heal, he looked up with eyes full of murderous intent and anger. Hushi also came back to her senses at this time. She just realized that the man in a black shirt who was facing off against the white-bearded old man just now had come to her side and was grabbing her arm. It turned out that it really wasn't an illusion when I felt someone grab my arm and slow down my descending speed. The man in a black shirt didn't seem to notice or cared about Nangongyu's existence at all. He just looked at Hushi. The hand that was holding her arm loosened and gently wiped her shoulder. A pure and powerful force penetrated into Hushi's body. The wound on his shoulder healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, Hushi wasn't most shocked by this. What made her feel the most incredible was that the power that the man in a black shirt put into her body was not spiritual power, but it made her feel more comfortable than spiritual power. The man in a black shirt did not withdraw his hand until seeing the wound on Hushi's shoulder fully healed. At this moment, Nangongyu's displeasure and killing intent toward this strange man had reached their peak. What does this bastard mean? Sheer is mine, who is he to save her, treat her? Everyone who covets his sheer deserved to be dead. What is he? Why is he so nice to you? Nangongyu gritted his teeth and said bitterly, Sheer, not only did you put yourself in danger, but you even hooked up with another man. Hushi slapped his hand and said dumbfoundedly, What nonsense are you talking about? I don't even know who this person is. And why are you still being jealous at this critical moment? As if to confirm Hushi's words, almost all the people in Mo Jingxian gathered around. The ugly Protector Yin was among them, and he was holding a whip like a viper. The tip of the whip was stained with blood. Protector Yin took the tip of the whip and licked it on his lip. The pair of eyes like poisonous snakes glanced at Hushi. He said sinisterly, What a tasty virgin blood. I like to play with young man and young girl like you guys. Ha ha ha, I told you. Little prey, you can't escape from me. Killing intent flashed in Nangongyu's eyes. Sealed dragon sword slowly flashed out in his palm. Are you the one who hurt him just now? Protector Yin was shocked by his murderous gaze. Then he didn't feel his cultivation. He sneered. It's me, then what? I'm going to strip off his clothes and let him moan under me. I'm going to cut off his hands and feet, and peel off his skin as well, ha ha. Chapter 1288. Two soul-splitting stages. Protector Yin hadn't finished speaking yet. The sealed dragon sword in Nangongyu's hand swung out leisurely. Nangongyu's movements were very slow, elegant and leisurely, and the light of the sealed dragon sword was even more flickering. It drew a dazzling arc in the night sky. Protector Yin sneered. Little prey, you think finding a helper will? Before he finished speaking, he suddenly lowered his head in horror. Then he found that his body actually split from the middle. What his two eyes could see was getting farther and farther. Nangongyu's slash was very clean and swift. Even when the sword slashed Protector Yin in half, there was no blood or internal organs splashing around. So it wasn't a bloody scene at all. However, everyone in Mo Jingxian was shocked and horrified, looking at Nangongyu as if they were looking at a monster. The gold core stage guards took a step back in unison. Even the man in a black shirt glanced at Nangongyu for the first time, and there was a dignified look in his eyes. As soon as Nangongyu caught sight of the man in a black shirt, he immediately stretched out his arms to embrace Hushi, and even lowered his head to kiss her lips lightly. He then looked at him provokingly. The man in a black shirt's eyes turned dark. The hands hanging by his sides gripped lightly as he looked away, and the white-bearded old man's face looked even more solemn. For the first time, he felt a little horrified in his mind. I actually met two soul-splitting stage monsters in this little Miluo continent at a time? Didn't they say that Miluo continent doesn't even have a few nascent soul stage martial artists? Who are they? The white-bearded old man took a deep breath and stared solemnly at Nangongyu and the man in a black shirt. Do you know who you are fighting against? Even if you kill me today, one day, my clan will definitely find you. Do you think you can hide for the rest of your life? Nangongyu said leisurely. Oh, is it? Can't I just kill you all? Nangongyu said it leisurely with a smile, but the white-bearded old man shuddered, because he knew that what the young man in front of him said was true. It was not a simple threat or a joke. He couldn't hide the horror on his face. He suddenly raised his voice and said, Even if you kill everyone here, people in my clan can find my whereabouts. One day, they will definitely find you. At that time, even if you can escape, everyone around you will have to die because of you. Both Nangongyu and the man in a black shirt squinted. Hushi suddenly hooked her finger at Nangongyu. When Nangongyu bent down, she whispered in his ear, Do you have a way to make these martial artists unable to protect themselves with spiritual power or other abilities? Nangongyu raised his eyebrows, stretched out his hand to hold the girl's waist tightly, and showed a smile in his eyes. What do you want to do? Hushi pursed her lips and said, Someone knows that I came in here tonight. If the people here are dead, it will be very bad for me. So, I want them to forget some of what happened tonight. Nangongyu's eyes lit up, then Hushi continued, My medicine can act on people's nerves, but people with a higher level than me can't, because their spiritual power will defend themselves automatically. I can't break through that layer of defense. However, as long as that layer of defense disappears, even if he is the king, he can't resist my medicinal power. Chapter 1289. Adore. Nangongyu looked at the girl's sparkling eyes. The more he looked, the more he loved. He wished he could rub her in his arms right now. He just felt that the more she looked, the more she fell in love. She could not wait to rub it into her arms, lowered her head and pecked the girl's eyes lightly before smiling. Okay, wait for me. After speaking, he flew up and slashed toward the white-bearded old man. Seeing that some people in Mo Jingxian wanted to escape, Hushi quickly said the same thing to the man in a black shirt. The man in a black shirt looked at Hushi with brighter eyes. Then he joined the battle without hesitation. Hushi certainly wasn't idle. She couldn't deal with the nascent soul stage and soul-splitting stage freaks, but not the gold core stage guards. Soon, everyone in Mo Jingxian lost consciousness, and their memories were manipulated by Hushi. Hushi also asked Nangongyu to release the beastkins and magical beasts in the dungeons. As for those martial artists who were also locked up, Hushi found that their treatment was very good. They didn't seem to be abused and suffering. Intuitively, she chose not to let them go, but she let Nangongyu take them away and lock them up. When they left the Beijing pavilion, Hushi discovered that the man in a black shirt had disappeared without a trace. Hushi was looking around, but Nangongyu suddenly grabbed her chin. turned around and said with annoyance, "Who are you looking for? You still want to see that unruly man?" "What unruly man?" Hushi slapped him with a chuckle. "I'm just curious about who he is." Being able to enter the Beijing Pavilion means that he is most likely from the Miracle Healer Academy. It is difficult for others to get in. By the way, how did you get in? Nan Gongyu was about to speak when someone suddenly spoke in the distance. Mo Jingxian also had some noises. Although Nan Gongyu and the man in a black shirt were powerful, the white-bearded old man was also at the soul-splitting stage. Of course, it was impossible for him to be unconscious for too long. Hushi frowned and said, "It seems that tonight will be a restless night." As soon as she finished speaking, she was already hugged by Nan Gongyu. The strength seemed like going to melt her into his bones and blood. Nan Gongyu took a deep breath and said hoarsely, "You go back to the dormitory first. Be careful not to expose yourself. I will protect you in the dark. Don't worry if you are exposed. Even if I have to kill all of the Miracle Healer Academy, I'll bring you out." Hushi was startled. What does it mean to stay in the dark? Suddenly, she remembered Nan Gongyu's spiritual root, darkness. Her eyes widened suddenly. For the first time, there was a bit of admiration and shock in her eyes. You can already blend yourself into the darkness and be unnoticed by others." Nan Gongyu smiled and said as if he didn't care, "Not only people can't sense me, even ordinary enchantments can't detect my aura in the darkness. So, that's why this guy can come and go freely at Miracle Healer Academy." Nan Gongyu enjoyed this little girl's adoring gaze very much. Ever since he met this little girl, he had always wanted to show his best side to her like a peacock. But this little girl was not much inferior to him in any way. She even had more abilities that amazed him, which made him couldn't feel the admiration from his beloved woman. At this time, he really wanted to hold the little girl in his arms and be intimate, but it was not the time. Nan Gongyu took another deep breath before letting her go reluctantly. His voice was even more hoarse. "I'll wait for you at Xingda Hall tomorrow." Chapter 1290. The man in black was Xianmu? This ability of his was not omnipotent. He could only merge into the darkness in the open, not close to people, and there was not much light. Only then he wouldn't be discovered. So even if he guards Hushi, he could only guard from a distance. After he finished speaking, he was about to leave. A pair of slender hands suddenly hugged him from behind. Nan Gongyu stopped. All his muscles stiffened. A girl's low voice came from behind. "Nan Gongyu, I seem to miss you more than I thought." As she said, the softness and heat of the girl came as if to burn his flesh and blood. At this time, my little girl is clearly teasing me. If I can bear it, I'm not a man. Nan Gongyu turned around abruptly, no longer caring about the occasion and time, and he was about to shove her into his arms and kiss her. However, when he looked back, he saw the figure of the girl running away in a panic. Thinking of the warmth that just touched his back, Nan Gongyu was unwilling at first. Then a wicked smile appeared on his face. He is my Shai? Don't worry, tomorrow, I will definitely punish this little girl who dared to tease me and run away. When Hushi returned to the dormitory, the heat on her face had not completely subsided. She had never been a person who would indulge in love, but when she saw Nan Gongyu, who had parted away from her, in Mo Jingxian, the joy in her heart was like boiling water. It was just that after taking the initiative to hug him, she felt very embarrassed, so she could only run away. In the dormitory, it was dark and quiet as if nothing had changed before leaving with her. Hushi jumped onto her bed silently, raised her eyes and glanced at Xianmu, who was not far away. This person and the sleeping position before she left had not changed in the slightest. He didn't seem to wake up. However, when she sniffed her nose, she always felt that there was a faint smell of blood in the air. However, when she tried to smell it, it disappeared without a trace. Am I overthinking? Hushi was hesitating whether to use this time to go into the void to check. Then there was a commotion outside. It's here. We released all the beastkins in Mo Jingxian, and the man in a black shirt seemed to have stolen an extremely important treasure. It would be strange if the people in Mo Jingxian didn't get mad. Get up. The Elder Council has ordered everyone to gather in the square. Anyone who dares to disobey will be killed. Hushi sat up from the bed all of a sudden, raised her hands slightly, and the light of crystal stone lit up in the room. She looked at Xianmu opposite, but she was suddenly shocked. Xianmu's face looked very bad. His skin looked bloodless with a trace of bluish gray. Hushi almost immediately thought that the man in a black shirt Mo Jingxian had helped him with Xianmu. The noise outside getting louder and closer. Hushi jumped onto Xianmu's bed in a flash, reaching for his wrist. A cold breath came from her fingers. This time, Hushi no longer doubted that the person she met in Mo Jingxian was Xianmu. Xianmu looked at him coldly. Vigilance, coldness and murderous intent flashed in his eyes, but some more complicated emotions were fluctuating. Hushi said solemnly, "I can help you cover up the abnormality of your body temporarily, but are you willing to believe me?" Xianmu was silent for a while, and the noise outside the house became louder. Chapter 1291. Disguise. Even there was noise from the utility room where Tong Bing lived. Xianmu suddenly restrained his killing intent and said in a hoarse voice, "I trust you. But my situation cannot be solved by medicine. As long as I use the strongest technique, my body temperature and complexion cannot be recovered. No wonder. I should trust my doctor's instinct." I couldn't feel any signs of injury to Xianmu's aura and spiritual power just now. Hushi smiled leisurely. "Who said it must be cured? Have you heard of the deceit method?" After saying this, Hushi quickly took out the disguise tool. When the soft and cool little hands touched his face with the strange ointment, Xianmu's body suddenly stiffened. His breathing almost stopped. The breath of the young man had a unique green herbal fragrance that did not make people feel feminine at all. But Xianmu just couldn't control his increasingly rapid heartbeat and slightly hot body. At this moment, Tong Bing's nervous voice came from outside the door. "Brother Xiyu, Brother Xianmu, do you know what happened? I seem to hear someone outside calling us out." Hushi frowned. Her hands were moving faster and faster. Xianmu's gaze turned cold as he shouted coldly, "Get lost!" Outside the dormitory, Tong Bing's body trembled, and tears instantly filled his eyes. He didn't understand why Xianmu's brother was always so hostile to him. He clearly didn't do anything bad, and he had been working hard to blend into the dormitory. Tong Bing looked into the dormitory room, and he was stunned. The dormitory room was lit up with crystal stone light, so Tong Bing could see the shadows inside. He saw that Xiyu seemed to be on Xianmu's bed. They were very close to each other. Tong Bing exclaimed and covered his mouth abruptly. Immediately, more tears filled his eyes. He pressed his hand tightly on his chest and said in a sobbing tone, "Brother Xiyu, I'm so scared. Xie, can you let me in first? I promise, as long as tonight is over, I'll definitely go back to the utility room." Hushi was working on the disguise cream on Xianmu's face. Disguise was easy for him, but to make it perfect, her disguise cream had to completely reproduce the features on Xianmu's face. Moreover, this disguise cream needed a warm touch on the skin, and it would not be wiped off due to water, fire and other reasons. This couldn't be achieved in a short period of time. But she knew very well that Xianmu must not be exposed, otherwise she would definitely be exposed too. So when Tong Bing came to call, she was a little impatient. "Don't worry, it's just a routine inspection. You just stay in the room and you'll be fine." Outside the room, Tong Bing was stunned by Xiyu's rejection. Then he became even more sad and disappointed. He wanted to say something else, but Xianmu's icy voice sounded, "If you don't get lost now, die." This sentence was not a simple voice, but it contained a spirit pressure. Tong Bing was just at the foundation establishment stage. How could he resist Xianmu's spirit pressure? He fell to the ground with a pale face. No matter how much unwillingness and fear Tong Bing felt in his heart, he still stood up, hugged his shoulders, wiped his tears and returned to his room. Outside the dormitory, the noise became more and more noisy. Hushi could feel that the entire Huang Medical Branch students had been called out. Chapter 1292. Break-in. At this time, Hushi also completed the work at hand. Looking at the man in front and his usual appearance, She tested the warm skin that was heated up by the hot water bottle temporarily made by Little Golden Dragon before nodding with satisfaction. Hushi was also a little stunned. She didn't expect that there are such a strange technique in this world. After using it, the skin would be colder than the thousands of years-old ice. Even she made Xianmu eat a grade 4 flame spirit pill, but to no avail. But fortunately, for problems that couldn't be solved from the inside, it was still okay to just confuse people with appearance. In fact, Xianmu's skin didn't have any senses except for feeling cold. However, when the young man touched his pulse and skin with his fingers, he felt as if he had been scalded by something that he almost wanted to jump. Hushi had already returned to her bed. She made an eye gesture to Xianmu, and they entered a state of meditation. After a while, the door of the room was suddenly kicked open. A man's brutish shouting came from outside the door. "Are you guys tired of living? Gather in the square now. Do you hear me?" Then came Tong Bing's crying voice. No, I just..." Hushi raised his eyelids, and the silver needle flashed in her hand. Tong Bing, who was lifted up by the man, immediately fell to the ground. Tong Bing immediately rolled and crawled under Hushi's bed and cried, "Brother Shiyu, they?" And the rude man who just lifted up Tong Bing shook his hand in a panic. At that moment, he felt as if his hand had lost consciousness. However, feeling that his hand quickly regained consciousness, the rude man immediately glared at Hushi fiercely. "Brat, what are you doing? You want to go against me?" Hushi jumped off the bed. Before the rude man could speak, he suddenly rose into the air and fell heavily to the ground. He spurted a mouthful of blood with several teeth inside. This change made everyone who rushed and stunned. When the guard behind the rude man saw the person who attacked, his expression changed greatly. Xianmu. The guards of other branches might not know Xianmu, but how would the guards not know the scourge of the Huang medical branch? The rude man whose teeth got knocked out was about to stand up and scold again. Then they hurriedly pulled him aside and whispered. The rude man's expression changed drastically. He looked at Xianmu with awe, fear and resentment in his eyes, but he didn't dare to talk nonsense anymore. The guards of the Huang medical branch stepped forward and bowed respectfully to Xianmu and also to Hushi. Although Xianmu was the most feared existence, the handsome, seemingly weak young man in front couldn't be offended too. Who didn't know the name of Shiyu at the current Miracle Healer Academy, and her strength at the Foundation Establishment stage that could defeat the Gold Core stage martial artists? Xianmu said coldly, "Get out or die." The cold killing intent filled the room. Everyone except Hushi couldn't help shaking their legs and almost fell to the ground. Those guards were so frightened that they almost wet their pants, but they came with a death order. How dare they not obey? They all showed an embarrassed look. Hushi coughed and said lightly, "It's so late, what's the matter?" Chapter 1293. Join in the fun. As soon as Hushi spoke, the suffocating cold killing intent in the room suddenly disappeared without a trace. The guard of the Huang medical branch was so frightened that his heart jumped out of his mouth, thinking that he would be killed by Xianmu. Now that he escaped from death, he immediately regarded Hushi as a life-saving straw. Shiyu, the Elder Council orders all the students to gather in the square. Everyone have to present. Look, you and Senior Xianmu. Xianmu jumped off the bed, glanced at every guard with a cold gaze and said slowly, "Who dares to order me? Don't dare." The guards were scared the shit out of them. The rude man who had just been taught a lesson by Xianmu was so frightened that he sat down on the ground with fear in his eyes. Tong Bing stood aside, looking at Xianmu obsessively. His lips moved slightly, murmuring the words "Brother Xianmu," softly as if to imprint this person and this name into his mind. The guards of Huang medical branch nearly wanted to cry. He didn't understand why he was so unlucky to be sent to ask these two scourges of the Huang medical branch. However, if they failed to complete the mission, they would surely die miserably. He had no choice but to look at Hushi for help again. And he said with a weeping voice, "Student Shiyu, we are also following orders. If we can't bring all the students to the square, we will surely die miserably." Hushi already held a dagger in her hand. She turned it slowly as she smiled. "Then can you tell me what happened first? Why the academy wants to gather all students at such a late night?" The guard shook his head and said bitterly, We don't know. It seems that a very important treasure has been stolen from a forbidden place in the academy. Therefore, all students and officers must be investigated. Violators will be killed without mercy. Student Xiyu, look. Really? It's so serious? It seems a bit interesting. Hushi looked at Xianmu and said with a half-smile. The long night is boring anyway. Why don't we join in the fun? Xianmu was silent, and the room was full of tension. Just when everyone thought that this scourge would get angry, Xianmu agreed with a soft N. He walked out of the dormitory first. Ha! The guard's eyes widened. That's it. Just like that, I made the scourge. Xianmu go? Am I dreaming? Why does Xianmu listen to Xiyu? Is this Xiyu more powerful than Xianmu? The guard took a deep breath, feeling that his worldview had been refreshed. He quickly followed behind Xiyu. Tong Bing was in a daze for a long time until a guard patted him again and said impatiently, "Go quickly." Tong Bing staggered, only to feel a burning pain in his back. When he looked over, he saw Xianmu and Xiyu mercilessly left him here. Tears slid down his eyes again. Tong Bing bit his lip and quickly chased after them. They quickly arrived at the square. At this time, countless Miracle Healer Academy students had gathered in the square. These students were divided into 8 areas. Students from each branch stand in one area. Hushi and Xianmu had just arrived at the place where Huang Medical Branch was. Everyone cast their gazes right away. Jinziyu, Qiandazhuang, Fang Yun, Zhang Yi and others ran toward them quickly. Chapter 1294. Flattered. Qiandazhuang's loud voice could be heard by the people of the entire branch standing here. Xiyu, finally you came. Then I can rest assured. They called us all up in the middle of the night, and they all look vicious. They didn't even bother listening to us. So scary. However, when Qiandazhuang were just halfway through speaking, he saw Xianmu who was walking side by side with Xiyu and his voice suddenly became hoarse. Including Jinziyu, Zhang Cheng and others, they all showed a bit of awe and fear toward Xianmu. The power and terrifying power of this man was known to everyone at Miracle Healer Academy, especially Huang Medical Branch. Hushi didn't seem to notice everyone's tension, and she casually introduced, "This is my roommate, Xianmu." As she said, she turned sideways and introduced everyone to Xianmu. Jinziyu, Qiandazhuang, Zhang Cheng are all friends I met when I took on the heaven-level mission. With the introduction of Hushi, Xianmu glanced at the few of them. In an instant, everyone's bodies were stiff. Their hearts were about to jump out of their throats. Xiyu, what is he doing? Why is he introducing us to him? This scourge has always been alone and never greets others. Whoever dares to greet him will only get lost. It's over. We will definitely be scolded by Xianmu or even beaten up badly. However, the next thing that shocked everyone happened. Instead of scolding, "Get lost," Xianmu nodded and glanced at them coldly without any killing intent or annoyance. Instead, it seemed like he wanted to remember them. Of course, just remember. Just like people recognize trees and utensils without any emotion at all. But this kind of goodwill also made everyone present flattered. Jinziyu, who had the most flexible mind, quickly reacted. He walked over to Xiyu and whispered, "Xianmu has a good relationship with you, right? It's okay, I guess?" Hushi raised an eyebrow. "Very good. Not really, right? Just an ordinary roommate. Of course, after tonight, we will be on the same boat. At least, we are considered friends. It's okay?" Jinziyu took a deep breath. You know that Xianmu has always been alone, and his status in the school is extremely special. Even the elders in the school can't order him to do things. There were many students with extraordinary backgrounds, and some people once wanted to make friends with him, but he didn't even look at them properly. But, Jinziyu paused and said with an unbelievable expression, "But just because you introduced us, he actually greeted us. If others know about it, their jaws will drop." Hushi glanced at Xianmu. This guy dresses in black at night as if merging with the darkness, but no one present can ignore his existence. Whether it was Huang Medical Branch or other branches, they all look at him with fear and awe. Speaking of which, Hushi also found it strange. She had also been in Miracle Healer Academy for a few months, and she had almost zero communication with Xianmu. She even didn't expect him to save her in Mo Jingxian. Hushi's thoughts were flying around when Tong Bing's breathless voice came from behind. Brother Shiyu, you guys are walking too fast. I can't keep up with you guys. Hushi turned around and saw Tong Bing hurried up. His forehead was sweating slightly, and his delicate little face was flushing too. Chapter 1295. Barrett seeing so many people standing, Tong Bing immediately stopped in embarrassment and showed a well-behaved smile. Hi everyone, I'm Tong Bing, Brother Shiyu and Brother Xianmu's roommate. You're Brother Shiyu's friends, right? Nice to meet you. Qian Dezhuang smiled heartlessly. Since you are Shiyu's friend, you are our friend too. Hearing this, Tong Bing immediately showed a happy smile, then took a peek at Xianmu. His already blushing cheeks turned even redder. But other people in Huang Medical Branch were not as simple as Qian Dezhuang. They glanced at each other with strange gazes. The way and time Tong Bing appeared in Miracle Healer Academy were really weird. Almost everyone in Huang Medical Branch was saying that he entered Miracle Healer Academy through the back door. But could someone really come in through the back door? Besides, he is so close to Shiyu. Wouldn't it be bad for Shiyu? Several complicated thoughts passed through their minds one after another, but they didn't show it at all. They just greeted Tong Bing with a friendly smile. From time to time, people would peek at Xianmu who looked cold. Time passed bit by bit. Soon, all the students in the dormitory or not in the dormitory were gathered in the square. Hushi also looked over. On the high platform at the front of the square, several students and an officer were held down by the guards. They were constantly struggling and cursing. Why are you arresting me? I just can't sleep and hang out outside. I didn't do anything bad at all. Do you know who I'm? I'm a student of Heaven Medical Branch. Who gave you the guts to do this to me? In the midst of the clamor, a thin old man in a dark purple doctor's robe stepped forward and looked at these people coldly. In the middle of the night, when the guards went to search, you were not in the dormitory. Where were you? What did you do? This old man looked very unfamiliar. Few people in the academy had seen him, but judging from his spiritual power, coercion, and clothing, he should be a senior elder of the academy. I just can't sleep and hang out outside. How can you? Pa! A slap made the student stagger. He almost fainted to the ground. The thin old man looked extremely sinister and impatient. I'm in a bad mood right now. I don't have the time to play with you rubbish. You won't say right? Fine, I'll see for myself. As soon as he finished speaking, his 5 fingers suddenly lifted up and bent into a claw. Immediately afterward, one of the students screamed and was sucked in by the claw. A white light flashed, and the student's screams and wailing turned into low moans. The fear on his face turned into a dull daze. Soul search. And it was the most cruel, destructive soul-searching technique. People who got their souls searched would become idiots in all likelihood. Even if they didn't turn idiots, their cultivation would regress a lot. Hushi stepped forward abruptly with a strong killing intent in her eyes. However, just as she took a step, her wrist was immediately grabbed by someone. A cold touch came from the palm holding her arm, as if to remind her to calm down. Xianmu's low voice came into her ears. Only she could hear it. Barrett. Hushi took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. Barrett, yes, I must bear it. I have always been cold-blooded, but that doesn't mean I can be indifferent when I see others being my scapegoat. Chapter 1296. Ants. Although Wuxia was rescued, in the communication with Shaoli, she learned that his current state was very bad. He had been in a coma and almost died. It probably had something to do with what Mojing Pavilion did to Beastkin. She still had a reason to stay at Miracle Healer Academy. Moreover, this kind of random elder in a small courtyard was at the soul-splitting stage, which was really not someone she could provoke now. Almost at the moment when Hushi was pulled by Xianmu, the thin old man raised his head abruptly and looked over with vicious eyes. Elder Fei, what are you doing? The elders who were originally ordered to summon the students were also shocked and angry when they saw this scene. They stepped forward to stop them. Without evidence, how can you search their souls? They are students of the Miracle Healer Academy. They are talented people with unlimited prospects. Talented? Ha ha ha. In our eyes, they are just a bunch of trash. Before the thin old man could speak, a young man in his early 30s beside him sneered angrily. We still haven't questioned you guys. Is the barrier of Miracle Healer Academy working properly? Did you investigate the students properly when recruiting? Why can someone break into the forbidden area of the academy? You better hope we can find the criminal and get back our treasure. Otherwise, the Miracle Healer Academy will be doomed. As soon as these words came out, the audience was shocked. The elders of Miracle Healer Academy looked ashed. Their eyes were full of humiliation, but no one dared to say anything more. The students below were filled with righteous indignation, and their faces were also full of shameful confusion. They could enter the Miracle Healer Academy because of their proud talents. They were admired and praised by everyone outside. But today, this person said that they were just a bunch of garbage? Moreover, their lives, in the eyes of the other party, were like ants that could be trampled to death at will. How could they not be shocked and outraged by such a fact? Hushi knew better than anyone in the Miracle Healer Academy. When she saw his honor in the Beijing Pavilion, she knew that he was definitely not from the Miluo continent. Then the Mojing Pavilion, which was mirrored with the Beijing Pavilion, was naturally the same. People in the upper realm looked at people in the lower realm with a natural sense of superiority. They regarded people in the lower realm as ants or beasts. This kind of mentality was not difficult to understand. However, it still made Hushi very displeased. While speaking, the first student whose soul was searched was foaming at his mouth. His eyes rolled as he fell unconscious to the ground. The thin old man didn't even look at the elders of Miracle Healer Academy, and he reached out and grabbed the second student. I'm a student of Heaven Medical Branch. I'm from Qixing Palace's Xia family. You can't. Ah. The second, the third, the fourth. In just a short time, everyone on the stage was foaming at the mouth and fell to the ground with twitching limbs. The students below turned their heads one by one, showing expressions of pain and fear. These people were completely crippled after tonight. The thin old man snorted lightly and said bitterly, "None of these." As soon as the old man finished speaking, the young man beside him immediately stepped forward and kicked down everyone on the stage. He also cursed, "Trash, waste our time." Whether on stage or off stage, everyone clenched their fists. Their eyes were filled with resentment and grievances. Chapter 1297. Coercion and Temptation. Deputy Dean Jiang, the highest-ranking person in the Miracle Healer Academy tonight, took a step forward and suppressed the turbulent emotions in his heart. Elder Fei, we know the strength of our students. No one can absolutely break through the enchantment of the forbidden area without triggering it. Elder Fei, you have already checked these people. Shouldn't we end this here tonight? End this. The young man beside the thin old man suddenly raised his voice and said sharply, "You think what we lost is a bin?" The thin old man glanced over with a fierce gaze, and the young man immediately shut up, but he looked at Deputy Dean Jiang with disdain in his eyes. The thin old man squinted slightly and swept over the students below. Suddenly, he turned his head to signal the other gentle-looking young man beside him. The young man understood, immediately stepped forward, and used spiritual power to spread his voice. "Don't panic. We called everyone here, not to hurt everyone. I just want to ask something. This matter is very important to us." The young man paused with a gentle smile, then he continued, "Please help to think about it. After this evening, have you found that people living with you or the surrounding courtyard have gone out? If someone is willing to report and help us find the real criminal, we are willing to reward a grade 7 nascent condensed pill." After speaking, the young man took out a white, round, crystal-clear medicinal pill. The strong medicinal fragrance and mellow spiritual power of the medicinal pills also made the students who looked at the medicinal pills swallow their saliva. Nascent condensed pill, and it's grade 7. It can increase the chance to condense nascent soul by more than 50%. In Miluo continent, there is no doctor who can refine the nascent condensed pill. All nascent condensed pills are handed down from ancient times or the upper realm. More than half of the students in Miracle Healer Academy had reached the gold core stage. If they could get the nascent condensed pill, It meant that they had half of the hope of advancing to the nascent soul stage. How could this make them not interested? Not to mention the students, even the elders looked at the nascent condensed pill with glowing eyes. Even if they were already at the nascent soul stage, the powerful crystal power contained in the nascent condensed pill was also of great benefit to the consolidation and improvement of their cultivation. The young man on the high platform caught everyone's greedy and burning eyes, and a mocking smile appeared on his face. He continued with a deep voice, "But if anyone knows about it and doesn't report it, when we find the real criminal, the person who covers him will receive the same punishment." As for what kind of punishment, I can guarantee that it will definitely be 100 times more miserable than these people who had been soul-searched. As soon as the young man said these words, the audience suddenly fell silent, and many people had expressions of horror on their faces. A few students even trembled under their feet, as if they wanted to flee back desperately. Some students' eyes flickered. Their expressions were full of greed and guilt struggles. Sure enough, with such a temptation and threat, some of the students at the bottom soon raised their hands tremblingly and began to report. The square was filled with screams, cries and curses. However, the bodyguards of the skinny old man didn't care about the students' cries for grievance at all. They directly dragged them to the high platform for soul search. If they didn't find anything they want, they just threw the students aside like garbage. Chapter 1298. Report. The deans and elders of the academy next to the high platform all looked extremely ugly. Several hot-tempered people like Zhang Shouyue couldn't help rushing out to stop them, but they were still dragged back. This was a world where the strong prey on the weak. Without enough power, there was no dignity and the right to resist. Hushi took another deep breath, clenching her hands tightly into fists. Her eyes looking at the thin old man, and the gentle young man above became colder and darker. What a coercion and temptation! No wonder they used the cruel method of destructive soul search immediately. Under this kind of heavy pressure, few people dared to lie. Coupled with the temptation of the nascent condensed pill, and the severe punishment for covering up, there are few people who can withstand the pressure without betraying their companions. Humanity was so fragile sometimes. Even though they were still indignant at the death of their classmates just now, they could still betray others for self-protection, even taking the opportunity to frame them. I want to report it." A woman's clear voice suddenly came from the crowd. "Although my roommate has never gone out at night, I saw someone appearing in the south area of the school around 12 a.m. She seems to be going in the direction of Beijing Pavilion." As soon as the voice came out, the eyes of the young man and the thin old man on the stage suddenly turned to her. The thin old man narrowed his eyes and said solemnly, "The direction to Beijing Pavilion? Have you seen who that person was?" Under the stage, the students' eyes were also focused on the woman. The woman took a step forward slowly. Under the light of the crystal stone, her true face was revealed. It was actually Ren Shuling. As soon as Hushi saw Ren Shuling, a bad premonition rose in her heart. Sure enough, Ren Shuling's next sentence was, "Of course. That person is very famous in our Miracle Healer Academy recently. I don't think anyone won't recognize her." As she said that, she turned around suddenly, pointed her finger in Hushi's direction, and said loudly, "It's you, Shiyu." There was a moment of silence. Hushi squinted and met Ren Shuling's eyes full of resentment. Behind her was Lu Jishi, who looked at her with a sneer. "You lied." Suddenly Zhang Yi, who was standing beside Hushi, yelled angrily, "You are slandering without evidence. Why did you tell such a lie to harm brother Shiyu?" Jin Ziyu and others also became extremely ugly. Qian Dazhuang shouted, "Ba Ren Shuling, your dormitory is in Heaven Medical Branch. Shiyu is from our Huang Medical Branch. How did you know she went out at night, and where she went?" Zhang Chong raised his voice even more and said angrily, "Ren Shuling, you actually avenged your personal revenge and framed Shiyu at this time. No one in Miracle Healer Academy knew that you had a personal grievance with Shiyu. You did this just to frame Shiyu. You are really vicious." Ren Shuling's face distorted when her thoughts were pointed out by Zhang Chong. She raised her tone. "Who said I'm framing Shiyu? I indeed saw her appear in the southern district at night. I'm just telling the truth. Many people have seen that she often appears near the Beijing pavilion during this time. Wasn't she searching the way so that she could sneak in at night? As soon as Ren Shuling said this, the thin old man's eyes became more gloomy and terrifying. The students at the bottom stepped back one after another, keeping a distance from Hushi, as if they were afraid of being implicated by her. Chapter 1299. Testify. However, strangely, not many students of Huang Medical Branch retreated. Even more than 90% of them still stood by Hushi's side. People kept shouting, "Shiyu is wronged." Who didn't know that Ren Shuling and Shiyu had a grudge? In fact, they were not familiar with Shiyu, but the arrival of Shiyu had changed their lives. They saw hope from despair and decadence. If there was anyone who didn't want Shiyu to leave Miracle Healer Academy, it was definitely the people from the Huang Medical Branch. On the high platform, the thin old man waved his hand and said, "Bring her to me, whether she is the trespasser or not. We will know after searching her soul." No way. Zheng Shouyue, who had been holding back among the elders, finally couldn't sit still. He rushed out with a red face. "Shiyu is the most talented disciple in my Huang Medical Branch. I will never allow you to ruin him like that." "You don't allow, ha?" The arrogant young man beside the thin old man laughed loudly. "Old fool, do you know who you are? You even said not allow to my master? I don't if he is a genius of the Huang Medical Branch. Even the top elite of your academy, if my master wants him to die, he must die." Zheng Shouyue's whole body was trembling. The spiritual power in his body was about to explode. How many years did he wait for Shiyu, a proud student? Moreover, because Shiyu's talent in pill refining inspired him, even his pill refining level had improved during this time. Such a student, how could he watch her die? However, before Zheng Shouyue rushed out, he was stopped by Elder Huang, who befriended him. Elder Huang shook his head at him with pain and resentment on his face and said in a low voice, "Shouyue, do you want more people to die in the academy? We can't go against them." While they were talking, the guards had already rushed down and come directly to Hushi's side, wanting to bring her to the high platform and let the thin old man search her soul. Ren Shuling watched this scene excitedly. Her eyes were filled with resentment and madness. However, just when everyone thought that Shiyu could not escape a tragic fate, the guards who rushed to Shiyu suddenly exclaimed in unison. Then everyone was pushed back as if they ran into something. A few loud bangs made the originally noisy square quiet for a while. The thin old man's eyes flashed, and the arrogant young man flew straight down, pointing at Shiyu and said sharply, "You dare to resist? It seems that the criminal is you." The young man in front of him looked calm. There was no sense of fear in his eyes, and he didn't mean to argue at all. On the contrary, he smirked slightly as if mocking and watching a good show leisurely. The arrogant young man suddenly felt extremely displeased. Even if the young man in front of him looked beautiful, he still wanted to dig out these mocking eyes. In this lowly lower realm, no one dared to look at him like that. The arrogant young man took a step, about to teach the young man a lesson. Suddenly, a low and cold voice came into his ears. "She didn't go out tonight. I can testify." "Who the hell are you?" The arrogant young man encountered people who defied him numerous times, so he furiously swept his hand with a wind blade. "I didn't ask you. How dare you?" Chapter 1300. It's me, so what? Before he could finish his words, a strong wind blew toward his face. The arrogant young man's eyes widened. The wind blade that he shot out turned around in front of the man with a cold face not far away, and slashed back at him fiercely. The wind blade, which used only 30% of his power, returned with 100% power. PSH. The arrogant young man heard a terrifying sound of flesh tearing from his neck. Immediately afterward, he fell to the ground, twitching. Underneath, a pool of blood soon leaked out. The arrogant young man rolled his eyes, and his throat kept breathing, but he could only make click sounds. Just a few seconds ago, he watched those low-level martial artists of the Miluo continent suffered, and even died like ants in front of him. However, how could he have thought that in the blink of an eye, It was his turn. Ah, Ed. He's dead. There was a mess in the square immediately. Everyone looked in horror at the young man who lost his life in an instant. They felt with pleasant and fear at the same times. It was an indescribable mixed feeling. On the high platform, the thin old man did not expect such a change. With a flick of his figure, he came to the arrogant young man who had died and checked with divine sense. His face suddenly became extremely solemn. Who killed him? Beside Hashi, a stern man in black clothes slowly stepped forward. It's me, so what? The anger and killing intent flashed in the thin old man's eyes, and the fireball in his hand was about to shoot. Elder Fei, don't. The anxious voice of Deputy Dean Jiang came from behind. Even though he was the Deputy Dean of Miracle Healer Academy, his gaze toward Xianmu was clearly filled with fear and awe. The gentle young man who just took out the nascent condensed pill ran over anxiously to pull the thin old man, and whispered a few words in his ear. The thin old man's pupils shrank suddenly when he heard the words of his disciples. His gaze toward Xianmu was already filled with surprise and awe. For a while, the square fell into a strange silence again. Ren Shuling saw that the bitch, Shiyu, was about to be turned into an idiot, but suddenly someone helped her inexplicably. How could she accept such a result? You're lying, she suddenly screamed. Shiyu was near the Beijing pavilion. Why did you say he didn't go out in the middle of the night? Before Xianmu spoke, Zhang Yi, who was standing beside him, couldn't bear it any longer. He said loudly, You're lying. Senior Xian is Brother Shiyu's roommate. Is it that you know more than him? Or do you mean Brother Xianmu is also his accomplice? Ren Shuling's face was twisted. When she was about to say, Xianmu must be an accomplice of Shiyu, she was pulled by Lu Zixi from behind. Lu Zixi took a step forward and said with a bow, Senior Xian, please don't get angry. Shuling doesn't mean that. She just told what she saw. If we find the real criminal, we can also reduce unnecessary casualties, right? Lu Zixi voice paused slightly, feeling the emotions of the people around favoring her, and she smirked slightly. Although Senior Xian and Shiyu are roommates, Senior Xian has always been used to being alone, and he won't pay special attention to roommate. Maybe Shiyu took advantage of this and deceived you, Senior? Chapter 1301. Court death. Even he might have done something else. Senior, you just didn't notice it. After all, Shiyu's talent for refining medicine and using poison is well known to the entire Miracle Healer Academy. As soon as these words came out, the thin old man's relaxed gaze once again looked at Hashi like a falcon, as if to see her through from the inside out. But Lu Zixi didn't seem to notice these changes at all. She just smiled and looked at Hashi and Xianmu. Shiyu, if you really want to prove your innocence, why don't you tell us why are you going in and out of Beijing Pavilion during this time? Hashi really wanted to applaud Lu Zixi. This woman's manipulative words has already reached a certain level. Does she really think that since I don't fight back, I'm easy to be bullied? Hashi smiled and was about to speak. Then Xianmu, who was beside her, raised his hand. That's right, he just raised his hand casually. Then, Hashi heard a painful groan from Lu Zixi, and she fell to the ground heavily. Pa! Crack. That was the sound of the kneecap being completely shattered. Ah! A scream resounded through the night sky. Lu Zixi could no longer maintain her gentle smile and decent words. Her beautiful face was distorted by pain. Everyone stared at this scene, but everyone couldn't feel anger and shock, only fear. Because Xianmu had unreservedly released the pressure. That was the pressure that belonged to the peak of nascent soul stage. How could the mere students here be able to resist? Xianmu looked at Lu Zixi, who was rolling on the ground coldly, and he said word by word. Who you question me? Court death. Lu Zixi had never suffered such humiliation and pain since she was a child. At this moment, she really hated so much that she was going to crush her teeth. Resisting the pain like a tear in her knee, she consumed a snow-white pill. Soon, her knee recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. As the injury completely improved, the tormenting pain also disappeared. At this moment, Lu Zixi really hated Shiyu and Xianmu to the extreme, but she was also really scared. In front of this indifferent man, he didn't reason with people at all, let alone cherish beauty. It seemed that except for Shiyu, anyone in his eyes was like an ant and could be killed at will. Damn it, Shiyu. Why Shiyu again? Tongbing stared at Xianmu, who was covered in cold air not far away. Even if the pressure of the peak of the nascent soul stage made his body tremble, his heart was beating hot. He had been cowardly and miserable all his life, and he had been bullied and tortured. He finally got the opportunity to enter the Miracle Healer Academy, but he was tortured by the father and son of the Hu family in public. Fortunately, he met Shiyu, and he really entered the Miracle Healer Academy by chance. Tongbing knew that his fate had changed from the moment he entered the academy. Even if he was questioned and bullied by others, he did not back down or give up at all. He would definitely prove that he came in with strength, and he would definitely make himself better and better. But tonight, watching a powerhouse like Xianmu protected Shiyu so desperately, he suddenly felt envious in his mind. Shiyu is already powerful, and he already has so much. What if brother Xianmu protects me like this? Isn't it wonderful? Chapter 1302. So wronged if I can be cared for and treated like that by Xianmu. Even if I were to die, I would be willing. The development on the square obviously exceeded most people's expectations. The thin old man frowned. He always felt that the boy named Shiyu was suspicious, especially the phrase, often appearing near the Beijing pavilion, which made him even more suspicious. However, this Xianmu was really not someone they could simply offend. The young man beside the thin old man suddenly stepped forward and said with a smile, "This student is Shiyu, right? Now someone has identified you as the murderer, and someone has proved your innocence. So are you okay with this arrangement? We will still investigate you, but not by soul searching. We will use soul oath. You just have to swear an oath and answer our questions. It will take a while, but you won't be wronged. Student Shiyu, what do you think?" Hushi sneered. Oh, so there is such a convenient and harmless method? Those who have been their souls searched are really wronged. After speaking, she didn't even care about them, but she went straight to the students who were left behind after being soul searched. Stop. The thin old man frowned and said solemnly, "Control him." The guards were about to move, but Xianmu took a step to the side. The powerful coercion spread out in an instant, causing the guards' movements to stagnate. Their legs were shaking. The thin old man's eyes flashed with dark light. He somehow felt that this man was more like the criminal who entered the Mojing pavilion than the boy named Shiyu. But the criminal was definitely injured. His aura couldn't be concealed. But this Xianmu didn't look weak or injured from the outside. The atmosphere froze for a while. Hushi had crouched down and held the hand of one of the soul search students. The student was from Xian Medical Branch. A girl who was friends with the student ran forward crying, "Ajan woo-woo! Ajan, how did you become like this?" As the girl cried, many relatives and friends of Miracle Healer Academy related to those students ran up. Some were weeping in pain while others were cursing in anger. However, they didn't dare to scold the thin old man and others, but the criminal who let them take the blame. Some of them even sneered at Hushi, thinking that she was the murderer, but they were implicated. Hushi turned a deaf ear to the crying and cursing of those around her. After checking the condition of the soul search student, she breathed a sigh of relief. It was true that the nerves in the brain were damaged more severely, but it was not incurable. Moreover, because the soul search just happened, and it was only nerve damage instead of completely breaking off, so there was no need to open the skull. She never liked to owe others. Since these people were wronged, she would make an exception to save them. Thinking of this, Hushi quickly took out the 101 gold needles from the void. What are you doing?" Seeing Hushi inserting needles into her friend's head, the girl shouted nervously, "Idiot!" Zhang Yi, who came over, said rudely, "You still don't understand? Brother Shiyu is treating him." Ah. Chapter 1303. Amazing talent, no way? The meridians and brain domains are destroyed by soul searching. How can he be saved? Never heard that such an injury can be rescued? Qian Dazhuang and others quickly surrounded Hushi, who was healing, preventing others from approaching and disturbing. Qian Dazhuang said in a loud voice. Look at all of you ignorant people. Don't you know how powerful Shiyu's medical skills are? Just a mere soul search. Shiyu can cure it with just a touch of his finger. Qian Dazhuang and the others were convinced of this. Jin Ziyu had been ill for so many years. His symptoms were very serious that even Dean Zeng of the Huang medical branch was helpless. However, when it comes to Shiyu's hands, the illness was cured easily. Although it couldn't be cured all at once, Jin Ziyu's current state was getting better and better. His cultivation had slowly recovered to the peak of Meridian's stage. As long as the next course of treatment was over, he would be completely healed. He would soon be able to reach his original cultivation level. This made Qian Dazhuang and others worship and trust Shiyu to the extreme. Although no one could heal the damage caused by soul searching according to common sense. Can their Sir Shiyu be judged with common sense? As Shiyu inserted more and more silver needles, beads of sweat appeared on the face of the young man named Ajan. His eyes opened. The dull pupils that had lost their focus were now full of pain. There were more and more beads of sweat on his head, and the boy's body began to struggle, but for some reason he couldn't move at all. Ah! A short, sharp shout came from the boy's throat. Hushi also took back all the golden needles on his body one by one. The boy jumped up from the ground and shouted, "My God, it hurts! It's like 10,000 ants crawling in my brain." Ah! Ajan, are you alright? The girl exclaimed, looking at him with surprise. Tears streamed down her face. The boy was stunned for a moment. Then he remembered what had just happened. His soul was searched. Ah! His soul was searched as if a piece of soul in his head was removed along with his memory. The severe pain and despair made him give up struggling. He even thought of suicide. But now, the young man found that the spiritual power was running very smoothly. His cultivation did not disappear at all. There was no problem with his memory and thinking. How? I actually survived it. The boy suddenly looked at Shiyu beside him, and the painful and alive memories just now slowly came back. It was him. It was the person in front who saved me. The young man knelt down with tears in his eyes, and he kowtowed heavily toward Shiyu. Shiyu, thank you for your life-saving grace. In the future, if you have any order, I, Jiangzhan, will execute without any complaints. Wow dash. This time, the square was in turmoil. No one has ever been able to cure a patient injured by soul searched. That is the double damage of the brain nerves and the soul. Otherwise, how can people's cultivation regress? However, but Shiyu actually cured such a patient? How can that be? Even the thin old man who was confronting Xianmu was shocked. Not to mention Miluo continent. Even if the great doctor in the upper realm, how many can do it? Even, I have never seen such a doctor before. Who is this young man? Does she have a special teacher, or does she really have an amazing talent? Chapter 1304. Scared, the thin old man suddenly wanted to take the boy back to study, even if he wasn't the one who broke into the Mojing Pavilion tonight. Thinking of this, the thin old man waved his hand and said coldly, "Anyway, seize this man named Shiyu. I will find out whether he is the one who trespassed in the Mojing Pavilion tonight. Those who dare to stop are enemies of our clan." As soon as the words fell, the guards were about to make a move desperately. Suddenly, there were rapid footsteps not far away. Moreover, it came from the direction of Beijing Pavilion. No one is allowed to move Shiyu. Wei Chengyuan's urgent and anxious voice came from a distance. His order was obstructed again, which made the thin old man feel a little annoyed. I just want to capture a mere boy from the lower realm. And so many people dare to resist me? Is it because I acted too kindly that I let these inferior creatures from the lower realms dare to be so arrogant? However, when Wei Chengyuan came to the front, the thin old man was stunned. In Wei Chengyuan's hand he held a silver plate with a strange beast-shaped totem engraved on it. He didn't say what the plate represented, but the skinny old man, his discipline and the guards all lost their composure when they saw the plate. When Wei Chengyuan walked in front of the thin old man, he was still gasping a little, and his face was still anxious. When he turned around and saw that Hushi was fine, he was relieved. He respectfully bowed to the thin old man. "Elder Fei, Xiyu is the person His Honor wanted to recruit, and he also instructed us to take care of him in the Miracle Healer Academy. If Elder Fei really doubts Xiyu is the thief, you must show enough evidence. Otherwise, I really can't explain this to His Honor. The thin old man's eyes were uncertain when he looked at the young man who was still being healed not far away. In this short pause, those who were soul-searched were cured and stood up again. It seemed that after treating the first person, she was familiar with the method, and the treatment became easy. That was healing the trauma of soul-searching. If such a young man can be brought back. It's a pity now that the Beijing Pavilion has intervened. No matter how unwilling I can only give up. Unless I can be proved that this young man is really guilty. The thin old man's falcon-like eyes suddenly looked at Ren Shuling as he said coldly. Prove that this kid has been to the Beijing Pavilion tonight. Say where and when did you see him? Wei Qingyuan saw that the person who identified Xiyu was Ren Shuling, and he said solemnly, Ren Shuling, you better think clearly. If you dare to lie, not only you, but your whole family will die without a place to bury with you. Ren Shuling was shivering with fright at the terrifying gaze of the thin old man. When Wei Qingyuan said that her whole family would die, she fell to the ground in fright. She didn't expect such a consequence at all. She just wanted Xiyu to die. She wanted to take revenge on Xiyu in the simplest and crudest way. Until this moment, she was finally afraid. But when she turned and saw Xiyu who was treating students not far away, everyone was protecting him, praising him, and supporting Jia. The fear in their hearts was immediately burned by the raging fire of hatred and jealousy. She propped up her body suddenly and shouted hoarsely, It's him, it must be him. Since he came, the academy has been in constant trouble. Even Brother Kaiyu was killed by her. He deserves to die. I want him to die. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.